Okay, so the original goal of today's discussion was to speak about Srila Prabhupada, which we will do. But I thought of taking this theme, which I heard from a seminar of Govind Prabhu, where he talks of an important theme in the Mahabharata and the Bhagavad Gita, which, as I was hearing that, I also saw that connection and of that particular theme with Srila Prabhupada's life. So what I'm speaking today is based on this one seminar which I heard of Govind Prabhu, and also this book that has recently come. It's called Swami in a Strange Land. It's by Yogeshwar Prabhu. It's Prabhupada disciple. His previous name is, civil name is Joshua M. Green. So he's a French devotee who was close to Prabhupada since 1970-71. So he has written very nicely Prabhupada's biography. So as I mentioned, the theme that we are taking today is titled as the clash between idealism and practicality. We start off with this. So it's a very simple concept that there are certain ideals which, people, which Dharma talks about always. Dharma presents various ideals for all of us to follow. But when a person leads his life, then sometimes it may be seen that those ideals may be very difficult to adhere to. Even it is also seen that even when you want to do something good, a so-called ideal can come in the middle of that. Okay, to give a very simple example, like if you see Gandhi, Gandhi stuck or persisted with the idealism of non-violence. Correct? He was always talking about ahimsa, non-violence. But practically it is seen that it is very difficult to stick to that kind of an ideal. It's a very nice idea of not being violent and not raising hand or not fighting with anybody. It's a very nice ideal. But the practical situation demands several times that you may not be able to stick to that particular ideal. So just like that was also in a way you can see, Mati, you can just keep the door closed. Yeah. This also you can see in many ways as the challenge that was there in front of Arjuna before the battle, why Bhagavad Gita was spoken. Because Arjuna was thinking in terms of how to respect his grandfather and teacher. So ideally, you are not supposed to fight with your grandfathers and teacher. You are supposed to respect them. How can you raise your weapon against your grandfather and your teacher? And that also, if you see, the kind of love that Bhishma Pitama and Drona had put into Arjuna, it's unparalleled actually. In fact, the Mahabharata, for example, describes that during the Virat Parva, when Arjuna was coming as that eunuch, driving the chariot of Uttar Kumar, when Drona sees that so-called eunuch, he immediately understands that this is Arjuna. His hair stands on end, he is excited that, I am seeing my disciple after so many years. So the love that both of them had for each other was mutual, and it was just phenomenal. So in fact, it is said that Drona starts speaking to Bhishma in a secret language, trying to tell him that, this person who is there is actually Arjun. He's afraid. Are the 13 years over? Will Arjun have to go back to the forest now? So Bhishma tells him, don't worry, Agyatva's period is already over. So if you see throughout the Mahabharata, the love that these two people had for Arjuna, that was also phenomenal. Now in such a situation, the ideal behavior is to be respectful to them. No question only. But then somehow so that is what he terms as Dharam Sankat, where there are certain ideals that we wish to follow, but sometimes the situation demands that no, you cannot stick to that. And here comes the beauty of Krishna, because Krishna plays that particular role in the entire Mahabharata and the Bhagavad Gita, where he basically convinces the Pandavas at every point of time to strike the balance between idealism and practicality. So it's a very simple thing that if somebody sticks, always to idealism, it could actually kind of, become suicidal. As in, it may just demand that you have to sacrifice too much because of so-called idealism. Just like, to give again another example, in the Greek history, you can read of Socrates. So the Socrates who is there, he was captured by the Greeks, by the government, and he was told that, you have two choices. Either you drink this poison, hemlock, or else you agree to certain things. You agree that, okay, you will not do certain things the way you have been doing. But for Socrates, sacrificing that idealism was impossible. You understood? So he said that, no, I cannot sacrifice that idealism under any principle. I would prefer to die. So you give me that hemlock, I'll drink and I will die. So that means sometimes if somebody has to be very ideal, then he may actually find it difficult to really live in the world, in that sense, that he may be forced in such situations. On the other hand, in the name of being practical, when someone gives up ideals, then he becomes totally shameless. Just like in modern society, we see that nobody wants to follow any ideal only. Right? Nobody is interested to follow any ideals in the modern society. So basically that just leads to a shameless situation where he will do anything he wants and he justifies it and is very happy also that what I am doing is correct. So we'll start with a good example, something from the Mahabharata. So this story we all know, the story of the fight of Bhima and Duryodhan. So in that story, if you see, there was the ideal. What was the ideal? The ideal was not to hit below the belt. That was the ideal. You are not supposed to do that. But if the Pandavas persisted with that ideal, never to hit Duryodhan below the belt, there was no question that they would win. There was no question they would win. Okay? So that's why ultimately Krishna signaled to Bhima and indicated that you have to hit over here. Only then this fellow is going to die. So, but at the same time, we see when he did that, he invited a lot of criticism. Because when Balaram was upset, even the demigods were upset. It is said that the demigods showered flowers on Duryodhan, saying, wow, wow, victory, jai, jai, what a fight. So basically we see that the whole world did not support the fact that Bhima went away from the ideals of that fight, in that match. But despite that, Krishna was convinced that from the higher perspective, for what we want to accomplish, to install dharma, we cannot simply keep persisting foolishly on these ideals of how the match is supposed to be. Because Krishna didn't look at it like a match. He saw it as a very critical component of re-establishing dharma. And for that, it was necessary to do whatever was necessary. So, this theme comes so many places, not in the Mahabharata, and also, if we carefully notice, several times in our lives also this theme comes, or we can see in other devotees' lives also, that this theme comes. So when I heard about this Socrates, I was just contemplating at that time that if you see this Prabhupada disciple, this Ladini Mataji, when she gave up her life in that Libya in front of that Prince Johnson and all those people, correct? Now Maharaj speaks about her and the glories of her, how she was just, so that story is very simple, that this Johnson had captured all the devotees and they had taken them to some bridge and he made the men stand in a line and he said that I'm going to shoot all of you. And as far as the woman, he said, you all can go. I don't really bother about women. I mean, I will not kill women. He had some whatever so-called ethics or something, some ideals he had. But we see that Mataji at that time, she was just a 42-year-old, American lady who was serving there. And she was the senior most among all the devotees, obviously, because the others were next generation disciples. So she comes and she holds Prince Johnson's gun and, moves it aside. But then there is a price that she pays by sacrificing her own life at that particular point of time. So if you see as such, that was a perfect ideal behavior, because the ideal behavior is, a Vaishnava principle is that if a Vaishnava is being criticized, you are not supposed to tolerate it. Correct? We all hear that. If a Vaishnava is being blasphemed, if you keep your mouth shut, then you also share that offense. So there is that thing that we hear, that if somebody is Vaishnava is being criticized, either you defeat them or you cut your tongue or you run away or whatever. The whole point is don't tolerate it. It's a very ideal thing to do as such. But now if you ask this question, tomorrow if some other devotees are also going to be put in that situation, should they do that only, or should they take that offer and walk off from there? Because she had that offer to walk off from that particular point. You understood, right? This Ladini Mataji at that, if you see that story, that Johnson was ready to spare her, saying that ladies, go away. Kuch nahi karne wala main aap log ka. Chale jao. So, of course, there's no question that she did it with that particular spirit, and, as Maharaj and so many other sannyasis and great personalities in ISKCON have said that she has gone back to Godhead for whatever service she has done and everything. But still, as a point, if somebody would ask you that if I am in that situation, what should I do? It's a very tricky thing, if you carefully observe. Are you going to recommend that person to stick to that ideal, which is there, certainly, or to take to the practical and go away from there? It's a very tricky thing. If you just think about it very carefully, what will you advise a person? Right? So, this is the theme that we are actually trying to discuss today. And we see that this often comes in the scripture, where there is this clash between idealism and practicality. So, even in Prabhupada's life, we see simple examples. Like when Prabhupada was a small child, when he had that disease and that British doctor advised to drink chicken soup, then Prabhupada's father, Gaur Mohan Dey, said, no, nothing doing, he'll not drink. We don't eat such items since generations. Means, we never eat this. How can I give my child chicken soup? Prabhupada, Gaur Mohan Dey refused. He was sticking to the ideal. But his mother felt that, no, what is this? Whatever is necessary, we have to do. A doctor बोल रहा है कि chicken soup तो देना पड़ेगा. क्या करें हम? So his mother persisted on that. She chose the other practical side. Whatever, quote unquote. Right? And then we know that the doctor only made chicken soup and gave, and then Prabhupada just put it in his mouth and he immediately started puking. And then Gaur Mohan Dey persisted. He said that no, see, he insisted on his point. He said that let's stick to whatever I wanted to. The point really is that this kind of dharma sankat between whether to stick to the ideal or whether to move to the so-called practical is a real challenge of life, which will keep coming. This challenge does not come for those who have already decided to take to the path of adharma, because they just keep doing whatever is so-called practical from their perspective. They never think only about the ideal. The challenge is only for the ideal people. When to become practical? And when we become practical, how much compromise are we going to do in order to accommodate that practicality? And another challenge for devotees is also that in the name of being practical, are we going to become totally shameless, or are we just going to justify anything and everything, or are we going to have limits to what we do? These are the challenges actually for devotees, and this is what is being addressed in the entire talk. Kishore, ಇದಗಳೆಲ್ಲ ಅಡುತ್ತಂಡು வழியில் போறியா? கிஷோர், அந்த கதவை சாத்திக்கோ இல்லாட்டா? ஹரிபோ,
that they are thinking like Madhu says that I'll go, and then Kunti says that you have a responsibility to stay back.
Yeah. I understood. Yeah, correct. That Sati, they're taking. Yeah. So basically, this particular challenge is always there. Now again, just like Prabhupada also we see, so one thing which we wish to make not only now but even throughout my today evening's talk is that how Srila Prabhupada also, though he exactly knew, or he grew up in so many ways in a very ideal culture, both in terms of his family upbringing as well as his spiritual master's training, but Prabhupada was actually open to certain practical situations when needed. So that's the real thing. So just like we'll take an example from Mahabharata and then again we'll come to Prabhupada. So this example from Mahabharata that Govind Prabhu talks of is a story of Vishwamitra and the Chandal. It's a very famous story. So the story comes during the changeover between the Treta and Dwapar Yuga. Sorry, I think Satya and Treta Yuga, whatever. So there is a Yuga Sandhya. At that particular time, this particular story comes. The story is that whenever there is a change in Yuga, there is a drought for a long time. So there was a drought for a period of 12 years. And in a period of 12-year drought, there was such a shortage of all kinds of resources that it is said that Vishwamitra Muni did not have any food to eat. He was actually starving. So one night out of starvation, searching for food, he somehow comes to the home of a Chandala. And this Chandala is one who sells dog's meat. So Vishwamitra Muni at night, he stealthily enters the home of the Chandala to steal the meat and eat it. As he's about to do it, the Chandala wakes up from sleep. And initially he's thinking that some thief has come, but then later when he sees Vishwamitra, he understands that this is a sage. So he's saying that, oh, this is Vishwamitra. So you have come. What are you doing here in my house? And why are you touching this kind of item? This doesn't befit you. This is the meat of a dog. You're a Brahmana, you're a great sage. How can you even think of touching such things? So there is a conversation between Vishwamitra and Chandala. And Vishwamitra is saying at that time that, you see, my dear Chandala, the human life is very important. And the first dharma is to preserve human life. Because with this human life only, I can achieve my goal of self-realization. If I lose this human life, I will lose that opportunity to achieve the goal of life. And currently, because of this 12-year famine, there is absolutely nothing here. And because there is nothing here, there is no choice but for me to eat this particular flesh. So they are talking for a long time actually. So Chandala is still surprised. Then he is telling the story of Agastya Muni eating that Ilwala Vatapi, that story. Then Chandala is asking, but that was a different thing. The Chandala also apparently knew all these stories. He said that no, but he ate it just to kill that Vatapi. He didn't eat it because of belly. So he said no, but that's just an example. Then finally he convinces him. And the Chandala gives him the meat of a dog. And then, because Vishwamitra does sacrifice only, he cannot, eat anything which is not offered in sacrifice. So at that point of time, he offers that meat of a dog as sacrifice to Indra. And then he eats it. And it is said at that time, Indra, seeing the situation that such a great sage is also having to eat such kind of meat, he decides to pour rain. And then that famine ends at that particular point in history. So it is said that Gandhi read this story in the Mahabharata in 1930s when he was in jail in Pune sometime. He was reading this story. And when Gandhi read this story, it seems for 3 days he could not sleep. Because he was thinking, how did he compromise his ideal? Ideal को कैसे compromise किया ये विश्वामित्र ने? How did he? Isn't it better to die rather than? You just turn that thing. Yeah, I understand. Maybe just move it a little bit and see if it can come on. If it does not, it's okay. Yeah. It's actually a very serious theme and there are too many examples, so I think I should not get lost from what I'm talking. Yeah. Is that okay? Srikant bro? Thank you. Yeah, thank you. Wherever he went, Kishore. I thought he's just simply gossiping. Okay. So Gandhi, for 3 days he did not sleep when he heard the story. He thought that how did he compromise his ideal? So this is the problem of that extreme of idealism, where one is just not flexible with understanding what is to be done. On the other hand, Govind Prabhu says that when some of his Prabhupada disciples wrote to him that for book distribution they had to go to certain parts in East Europe, where there was no vegetarian food available, Prabhupada writes to them saying that if you don't get vegetarian food, you eat meat and distribute books over there. So he was making this point that for someone like Srila Prabhupada, who for generations together in his family and his material and his spiritual heritage, that means his family heritage and his spiritual heritage, totally against the eating of flesh, for him to say this, do this adjustment is actually the real understanding. That means he is someone who, really understands when the practical step has to be taken. So he was saying that this is not easy, by the way. He says very clearly that the goal of this topic, or he said there is a danger of any philosophy. He said that the danger of any philosophy is that it can be misused. Just like we all know, like in Bhagavatam, there is Kamsa who preaches philosophy. After the 6 children were killed and when Durga Devi escapes, he's preaching philosophy. Or Hiranyakashipu, when Hiranyaksha dies, he also preaches philosophy. So demons also use philosophy time to time, but they use it for the wrong purpose. So as devotees also, the certain subtle principles of dharma, when we hear, we have to just ensure that we get it rightly. Otherwise, it's likely that anybody could use it to justify anything. So the point here is, like we see Vishwamitra's story or Gandhi's understanding or Prabhupada's understanding in terms of what had to be done at a particular time, truly indicates that, personalities like Srila Prabhupada or the sages or Vyasadeva in general or Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he really understands the balance between idealism and practicality. Whereas generally in the world, people take one of these two extremes only. Like all the materialists, generally they take the perspective of practicality. And most religionists, they take the perspective of idealism. Just like Buddhism, for example. What an extreme of idealism. So he was telling that Tibet is the only country which lost its freedom to China without raising any weapon. Because the Tibetans were full of these Buddhists and their philosophy is ahimsa paramo dharma. So you cannot raise a weapon. So when the Chinese came to conquer, they didn't do anything. They just allowed them to come over. So this is the challenge of staying adamant on that idealism principle, where it becomes suicidal. Just like we saw the example of Socrates also earlier, or any such example where you stick to it. But at the same time, that does not mean idealism is to be sacrificed. Idealism is the core. But at the same time, that understanding is very important. So he was telling that, just like the Pandavas we see as the best example who knew the balance between these two. And the Pandavas had to face very tough situations. Most of us don't have to face such tough situations in our life. So he was saying, for example, the Pandavas, if you see Yudhishthir Maharaj, when that lie had to be, when Drona had to be killed, he was hesitating to speak the lie. Because he knew that this is not ideal. I cannot do it. But Krishna had to convince him that this is the thing that you have to do right now. This is the most important thing required for establishing dharma. Hence you have to do it. He tells him that basically this Drona has gone really crazy. He is not understanding who is not to be killed. He is now killing all ordinary people also in the field. He is not supposed to do that. He is a Maharathi. He is supposed to fight only with Maharathis. He is killing ordinary soldiers. That itself means that he is out of his mind. So he has to be killed. That's it at this point. So it has to be done. But he said the beauty is that the Pandavas, even though they, at several points in the story of Mahabharata, they sometimes do something as per the requirement of practicality, especially under Krishna's guidance. But at the end, they always feel bad or they always repented for doing things like that. Just like, for example, the Pandavas, after the war also, they feel that why did we kill so many people just to become the king? You understood? They felt this very strongly. So he said, this is a genuine devotee who sometimes moves away from the idealism for sake of practicality, especially to establish dharma or to do something very concrete. But at the same time, he's not very happy thinking that I compromised. He feels sad at heart that I had to do it. That means he takes personal responsibility for it. That मुझे ये करना पड़ा ये particular situation में. I think you leave him, na? He can have a stroll in the home. I think that is better than allowing him to talk. Okay, give that mic to him. That's all he wants. Okay, where's the mic? No, actually, if you just remove the most important part of it, I don't mind. It's the most important part. There is a very important, critical thing in this. Yeah. You want this mic, right? You'll get it. This is difficult. ये ठीक है भैया, ये ठीक है. मेरे साथ कंपटीशन मत करो अभी. थोड़ा बड़ा होने के बाद कंपटीशन कर सकते हो. अभी इतना जल्दी मेरे साथ कंपटीशन मत करो. ओ ले लो. थैंक यू. Yeah, he's very happy. See, it's better not to annoy children. I've learned that over a period of time. Especially during class, you cannot. You know, at home you can when you're privately there because maximum they'll cry. But in class it's difficult. So let them be happy with whatever they want. Yeah. So we were at this point that when good people, when they make compromise for ideals, they regret that on a personal level they feel. Just like Yudhishthira Maharaj and the Pandavas felt. Always they felt on a personal level that we had to do this. They were not feeling totally shameless in that particular thing that, okay, so what? We had to do all this. They didn't feel like that. They felt. We didn't. You understood? So for example, Vishwamitra Muni, if he has to eat the meat of a dog, it's not that he's thinking that, oh, this is the first class opportunity to eat meat, you know. And necessarily every time the 4 regulative principles were binding us. Now this is freedom. We can do what we want. It's not like that. At that point of time, they really feel very bad that, what else could we do? They regret that on a personal level. But they know at the same time that this has to be done at this point. So he said that this flexibility when one has, then one strikes the right balance between idealism and practicality. Otherwise, there is a danger of becoming totally shameless in what he does. So he was telling several other very interesting examples of sticking to idealism. So this is one story from Prabhupada. So he said Prabhupada told the story, a very rare story. I mean, I've never kind of directly heard this, but in this talk he talks about the story of Prabhupada. Prabhupada told the story of this man who this man had a long beard and this man was, kind of in some forest area. So one red ant climbed his beard. So he thought that this, and we all know, right? The red ants, they bite much more solid. Their bite is really, it stings much more than the black ants. Their bite is not too painful. Sometimes we have experienced that red ants, all devotees, especially in yatra, sometimes people announce, red ants. So one red ant climbed this man's beard. So he was a little worried. He thought that because his principle of idealism did not obviously allow him to just throw the red ant anywhere. He thought that the red ant must go in the ant hill only. So the ant hill was nearby. So he said this man, he took his beard close to the ant hill so that red ant can climb down the beard and enter the hill again. But unfortunately what happened? Prabhupada said 100 ants came on the beard. So then he was stuck with the practical challenge to really, comb them out and kind of in that attempt to even perhaps kill some of those ants. So the point here is, if someone, when there is a very critical situation and someone, strongly says that no, I will remain on the ideal, I'll stick to the idealism, then he can makes a fool out of himself. Okay. So he also gave examples of Vidura, for example, how Vidura's proposal to abandon Duryodhan was in the same mood. So we all know the story in the Mahabharata that when Duryodhan is born and there is the braying of donkeys, Duryodhan is born in the braying of donkeys. Vidura at that time, he tells Dhritarashtra that forsake him. He actually tells him to abandon the child. There is a very interesting reason why abandon the child. Now for that we have to go back a little bit in the Mahabharata and see what Bharata did. We all know the story, right, of Bharata. This Bharata, the Shakuntala Putra Bharata, what he does is, he had 9 sons of his own, but his sons were grown up and his sons were useless, kind of, they were a big nuisance to society. So Bharata at that point, he adopts a son and makes him, the adopted son, the king, and he kills his 9 sons. Yeah, so now the question is why he does that. He kills because it is said that if he did not kill and he just walked away to the forest, then these 9 sons would not allow this adopted fellow to rule, right? They will make his life a misery. They will say that how can you be, ruling? Okay. They will say that how can you, rule? No matter what, we don't know whether our father posted you. You understood the point, right? So he had to take that extreme step. It's a very extreme step actually, if you see. That means the point here is that ideally, can you kill someone? Now, can you imagine the amount of confidence you should have before you take this act? Certainly, killing anybody, even killing your own children, it's a sin, right? From the ideal perspective. Can somebody do that? You just cannot do it. But he had to do that, understanding what will be the practical situation later. You understood? So, but Vidura says as a child, if you abandon Duryodhan, and let us say Duryodhan is adopted by somebody, and he grows up in some local small family, even though he will have his demonic propensities, he will not have such a huge kshetra to do mischief. Because he will be just in somebody's house as a boy, maybe in that family he will cause some catastrophe. But if he is the prince regent of the whole kingdom, then the amount of difficulty that he will impose is much more. Right? So that's why he tells him that right now we can abandon him. So all these are examples of how people in our scripture, they decided to move away from the ideal on such extreme occasions when they knew what will actually be practically beneficial for society. And he gives another example which is even more striking. This example is there in the Mahabharata. The example is that during Varnavat, when Kunti and, for the benefit of those who arrived late, the topic that we are having is a clash between idealism and practicality. So we are 45 minutes into the topic right now. So, in that story of Varnavat, when the 5 Pandavas and Kunti, they made that tunnel and they were about to escape through the tunnel, it is said that there was a big party or whatever, there was a gathering, many people came to eat food, and there were one Nisha, the woman, and her 5 sons who were there in the house. Now, if you see the Mahabharata directly, I read that just before kind of presenting this. So it doesn't make it very clear whether the Pandavas knew that these 6 people are there or they are not there. You understood? The story says that these 6 people were lying in the house and Bhima and Sahadev set fire and they all walked off. So it's not very clear. But the thing is, there are many people who argue, based on whatever, some commentaries or whatever, that the Pandavas knew that these 6 people were there. And why they had to know that is because unless there were 6 bodies, 5 men and 1 woman body found, the Kauravas will not suspect. Kauravas will think that the Pandavas have escaped. The Kauravas were supposed to know that the Pandavas are dead so that they don't harass them anymore. That means at that time, the story is that the Pandavas had to run away, giving the impression to the Kauravas that we are dead. Because if they would not, their life was under threat. But in order that they give that impression that they are dead, somebody should die. So there is one version of the story that also says that the Pandavas knew that these 6 people are there. Now here you imagine, from a very ideal platform, can you allow somebody to die for you to live? You cannot do that. Ideally, so there are many people who have, it seems, written books also saying that because Kunti allowed this way, Kunti also had to die in a fire later. She got karma back. So people, it seems, comment like that in modern times. So he says, but the point is that though perhaps in a general sense it is not ideal, you allow somebody to die instead of you dying, but that was the right thing to do. Again, if you see the other extreme, the practical thing is what? Allow somebody to die and you escape. In that sense. That, apne ko kya farak padta hai? Apna जीवन बच गया बस, दूसरे को मरने दो. Correct. That kind of thinking. But the Pandavas were not even like that. It was not from a personal perspective. They are supposed to be kings of the world. Their lives are more important from the perspective of the entire world rather than, some ordinary person's life. Now the thing is, you should have confidence about that yourself also, na? You should have confidence in yourself. You're a Vaishnav. Vaishnav का एक characteristic humility भी है. अपन तृणादपि सुनीचन, I am not all that great. So you need to have that confidence. that my life is more important than the life of these kind of Nishada people. And you have to be ready to sacrifice your own life, to allow others to sacrifice. So we see this constantly. I mean, as I was hearing this talk, I was also thinking about Ramanuja and Kuresh. We all know that when the king Kolatunga invited Ramanuja, to his court, Ramanujacharya knew very well that this fellow is calling to torture me now. But at that time, Kuresh convinces the spiritual master that you give me your dress, I will wear your dress, and I will go. And Ramanujacharya allowed him to do that. He gave his sannyas robes to Kuresh, and he wore an ordinary dress and went to Melkote. And this was with the full understanding that this fellow's life is at threat. And it indeed was, because Kuresh's eyes were plucked out and he was tortured. So the point is that despite knowing, so now just try to imagine, try to put yourself in that personality's shoe at this particular point and try to think from an ideal perspective, how could you allow somebody else to be tortured just to escape torture yourself? You can't do that. You're not allowed to do that. From a very practical and materialistic perspective, it is best to allow anybody to suffer. But here that self-confidence, that yes, my life is really important. I mean, despite being a Vaishnava, you have to really understand. Ramanujacharya perhaps, he agreed, right? He allowed his disciple to take over his farm. Saraswati Thakur, there is a story. When he was in Vrindavan, there was one place where there was threat to his life. And there were people with sticks and everything, goons who had come to beat him or do something. So at that point of time, he exchanges his cloth with another disciple who is also tall and wearing specs. And he takes that sannyas cloth and go and Saraswati Thakur escapes. I've read that story as well. So there also it's a very interesting principle that where you understand that, okay, from a so-called ideal perspective, you may not be allowed to do that, but then you have to have that confidence in your life, that how your life is more important, and you allow somebody else to give up their life on your behalf. Now that's why we see that even the Bhima and that Bakasur ke story mein, that Brahmin family who was supposed to send the son, they said that no, we cannot allow your son to die. See how important ideals were to people. That Brahmin family, they tell Kunti that we cannot allow. How can I allow? Even if you have 5 sons, I have 1 son. That's not the point. If my son has to die, my son only has to die. Kunti has to convince that, hey, Baba, don't worry, my son is too powerful, kuch bhi nahi hoga usko, wo maar ke aayega usko. Then he says, okay, fine. If that is the case, then we may try it out. So the whole point here is that kind of confidence, of understanding. So we understood the point, right? That means this clash between idealism and practicality, which we are talking about, the confidence over there that when, I can move away from the ideal in the name of practical, when can I actually do that? And when I cannot do that. And even if I do that, so 2-3 things we have said till now, just to kind of summarize the whole thing, just for the benefit of everybody who's here. So we are talking about the clash between idealism and practicality, which is there in everybody's life. And to extremes, it is seen in the Mahabharata and in the Bhagavad Gita. In the Bhagavad Gita, we see that Arjuna is having this clash. Idealism means to respect the superiors. Practicality means to fight against them. What to do? That clash. Okay, we saw in the story of Bhima and Duryodhan, hitting below the belt is not ideal, but practical was to do it. We saw that several religions generally stay on idealistic platform and materialists stay on practical platform, where they do whatever they want, nonsense. So one makes you feel very guilty. The ideal platform makes you feel very guilty, and the practical platform is a shameless platform. So how a devotee understands to the essence of ideals, but at the same time is willing to, do whatever is necessary, as Prabhupada said. So Prabhupada's 2 phrases which are there in ISKCON. One is, purity is the force, that is the ideal, and utility is the principle, that is from the practicality perspective. So we also give Prabhupada examples like Prabhupada's having to eat chicken soup. How his father and mother, so sometimes husband and wife also there is this clash of thought process. One may stick to idealism, another may stick to practicality. Correct. I think it's in our daily life also in so many ways. Ideally, we all know when we are supposed to get up in the morning. But practically, we have our own set of challenges. How do we get up at that time? So it's a daily struggle also, right? In some ways. But of course, in our cases, many times we adjust to the practical because of bodily inconvenience. But that's not the theme of the story here. The theme of whatever we are discussing is that how people moved away from the ideals for the sake of dharma, not because of personal difficulty. For us, it's all a matter of personal difficulty where we are moving from ideal to practical, right? So ideally, we know what is to be done in every domain, but then practically we have our own struggles. How we do it? So we are always making adjustment over there. So that's our story. But we are talking about Prabhupada. Then I think we gave the interesting story of, we spoke about Vishwamitra and the Chandal. How Vishwamitra, he told this particular Chandal why he is eating the meat of a dog. Right? Because he had to save his life, because his life was under threat. How Prabhupada adjusted and told his disciples that if nothing is available, eat meat and preach. But the point really is, who said it? Prabhupada said it. And who is Prabhupada? He was not someone who came from such a background. He came from a very, very pure background. For him to make that adjustment is very difficult. See, that's the point here. Perhaps for someone like us who has come from a very, nasty background, to say something may be a little easier. Because it's like, most of the time we are adjusted to it. But here it is not like that. Then we also told about, so now we'll give some more examples of this clash between idealism and practicality. Another example he gives is Krishna jumping at the death of Ghatotkacha in the war. We all know this, that in the 14th night of the war, when Ghatotkacha, takes the center stage and starts killing the Kauravas en masse, at that point of time, Karna is coaxed by Duryodhana to use the Shakti weapon on Ghatotkacha. Reluctantly Karna uses it, because Karna had reserved it for Arjuna. But he uses it. And it is said, when the Shakti obviously finds its mark and Ghatotkacha falls to the ground dead, Krishna starts clapping his hands and jumping up and down immediately. And Arjuna is wondering, he's saying that, oh Lord, you're in whose party? Our party or their party? You changed party soon or what? So Krishna says that, no, I'm very happy right now for two reasons. One is this Ghatotkacha is against Brahminical culture in general. So he also had to be dealt with that way. But more importantly, Karna's Shakti weapon is now gone. Now he's very ordinary. He's just an ordinary mortal. And when he comes in front of you, the match is, very easy to finish off. So the point here really is, imagine, you're on somebody's party and there is death of your party member. Immediately will you start jumping in happiness, saying that, yay, even if whatever this reason is. But Krishna was very, he was very open with whatever emotions he had to express at that particular point of time, because he knew very clearly that this is what he was going to do. Right? So, there's another story he told from Mahabharata, very interesting story. He spoke about the story of Krishna and Sudama. Now, this story teaches us that what is ideal for one may not be ideal for the other. Very interesting story. The story in the Mahabharata of Krishna and Sudama, I've never heard it before. The story is that when Krishna and Sudama were in the ashram of Sandipani Muni, on one occasion, Krishna was hunting and he shot a bird. And Sudama immediately felt that, hey Krishna, why did you do it? He took the bird and started, caressing it and trying to treat it. So Krishna said, hey, why did you stop that? I was trying to practice something, shoot at a moving object or whatever. So then they both go to Sandipani Muni to understand who's right. So Sandipani Muni says, both of you are right. Sandipani Muni says, because Sudama, you're a Brahmana. So you are supposed to feel constant compassion towards any creature. But as far as Krishna is concerned, he's a Kshatriya. He has to see blood. If he doesn't see blood now in his training phase, how will he see blood when he actually goes out and fights? He has to be trained to see blood and bloodshed and violence. There is a training for him for that. So in that perspective, what we see is that, so that's why all Kshatriyas would hunt, right? We hear this. They would all hunt because they had to see bloodshed. No, is it relevant in today's world? It's not. If you're not in that position, it's not relevant to you. Perhaps if you're in the position, it is, but hardly anyone is in modern world. So the point here is also that idealism could differ from person to person based on his situation, because dharma is different for different people. Brahman, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra. So I think I have kind of summarized most of what I wanted to say. Yeah, just maybe one or two examples before we go to Prabhupada's stories. Yeah, this was a very interesting point he said. He gave this nice example. He was telling about one devotee who grew up, in a very nice environment, devotee environment. He always got nice Krishna prasadam at home. Everything was very ideal. Everything nicely cooked, nicely offered. Say Mahaprasad prayers, nicely honor it. Very ideal situation of honoring Krishna prasadam. There was some situation in his life where he had to go out somewhere else for a long period of time, where there were no devotees. And he didn't have the facility to cook as well. So he was forced to take in some restaurant. So he was telling this as an example of the challenge that lies with those who are, sticking to ideals. So he was saying that this person, when he went there, because he had no choice at that time, he had to go there and he had to eat in the restaurant. Of course, he ate vegetarian food and whatever, but he had to. But he felt very guilty, it seems. And he was constantly telling the devotees that I'm feeling very bad. ऐसा बाहर का खा रहा हूँ मैं, प्रसाद नहीं है ये, unoffered है, तभी मुझे खाना पड़ रहा है, what to do. He was feeling very guilty about it. He was not feeling right about it. But devotees tried to tell him that no, in this situation perhaps there's nothing else you can do. You have to just tolerate it for a period of time. Whatever period you're supposed to live there, you have to tolerate it. So he was giving this as an example to say the challenge in a devotee's life. So he was saying that on one hand, a devotee could, in the name of practicality, be totally, careless about it. Saying that, so what? It's a practical nahi hai, हमें ऐसा प्रसाद खाना है. ये तो थोड़ी practical है. Real world में ऐसा थोड़ी होगा. That's what people also tell us, right? Many times when we say, when we, in office also, sometimes people ask us, you're always taking, तो फिर बाहर जाते तो क्या होता है तुम्हारा? ये practical है क्या तुम्हारा philosophy? लोग हमको पूछते हैं भी office में. People ask us actually, when they see that you don't eat anything, they say, फिर आप जब बाहर जाते हो तो क्या करते हो? कैसे करते हो? हम बोलते हैं ना, हम लेके जाते हैं, ट्रेन में जाते हैं ना, 2 दिन के लिए प्रसाद लेके जाते हैं. ये सब करते हो? फिर बाहर जाना पड़ा तो दूर दूर नहीं, हम फिर इस्कॉन मंदिर ढूंढते वहां पर. So people try to see whether your idealism has a flaw and whether your so-called idealism is practical in the world. Correct. So he was saying that those who stick to the practical, they give up all ideals. And those who want to stick to the ideal, they feel guilty when they do it. But that's the right thing. So the right thing, what we understand here is to understand what ideals are and try to stick to it always. And when situation demands, either for the maintenance of our body, for the sake of dharma or whatever, to understand that no, here I have to be flexible. But at the same time, feel bad that I violated a particular ideal. And not feel, chalta hai, farak nahi padta hai. So, if this is manageable, then we have actually understood, he says, the spirit of the Bhagavad Gita. Because the Bhagavad Gita and the Vedanta philosophy is all about this. Understanding ideals, understanding practicality and understanding. So that's why, that's why you see in the Shastra, they allow this whole concept of if a man dies without a child, like Maharaj Vichitravirya, when he dies without a child, Vyasa is invited and, he has, union with Ambika, Ambalika, and these two people are born, Dhritarashtra and Pandu. Now you just try to imagine, in order for a person to do that, that's why it is very clearly said that this is not for Kali Yuga people. Because in Kali Yuga, Kali Yuga people will generally exploit these kind of regulations. To really understand that ideally this is not correct, but practically this is what we have to do right now. And at the same time, not become shameless is such a challenge that it is not meant for Kali Yuga folks only, such rules. That's why that rule which is there, likha hua hai na, ye sab rule Kali Yuga ke liye nahi hai. In Kali Yuga you cannot do it. In previous yugas you could do it. Because what we understand from that is, to really balance between idealism and practicality requires great maturity. Because most of the times, we just take extremes. Right? And in our case, we take extremes mainly on a personal front. Right? Yeah. So he was telling some examples also. He said just like Socrates was the example of someone who, died, in the name of his idealism. He was giving example of Hitler and Stalin, who were such demons who took shelter of the theory of practicality that it is said Hitler, Stalin, their philosophy was that whoever are old people in the country, in fact, if you read Roman history, I have been reading Roman history recently to teach my children about Roman history, how it was. In Roman history, in many tribes, their culture was that if a person is old and he is not yet dead, put him on a boat, send him in the water, and set fire to the boat and let him die, because he has not died in a war. So it's so pathetic that he did not die yet. That is better that he dies in the fire. They would kill him like that. So Hitler also had this philosophy. Old people, they're useless in society. If you see from a very hardcore practical perspective, that is actually correct. If you see, that means if you see from a very hardcore practical perspective, what is the use of an old man or old woman at home? तकलीफ ही है ना. अगर आप बहुत ही प्रैक्टिकल दृष्टि से देखोगे इसको, एक बूढ़ा व्यक्ति या बूढ़ी माँ दादी जो भी घर में है, उनका कंट्रीब्यूशन क्या है? जीरो है कंट्रीब्यूशन. So from a very reductionist practical approach, it's best to kill them. And that's what these people said. That's what Hitler, Stalin and all did. With all old people. Hare Krishna. That was a very big instruction too. Huh? No. That is on only. Because the camera does not need power. So that is okay. That has been recording all this stuff. Okay, let's continue. So from a very hardcore practical perspective, what these guys suggested was correct. Why maintain an old man, an old woman, or a deaf man, blind man? क्या contribution है ये लोग का? So their philosophy was kill them, so that everybody else can be very efficient. And they convinced people. Can you imagine? They convinced people about their practical approach to life, and people agreed also. ये तो practical है. इसका कोई use ही नहीं है society में. मार दो इसको. They would kill them. So he was saying that is the extreme of practicality. So practicality basically is materialism. And today's world we actually see this only, right? People talk about practicality only. Ideals are all gone. No, nobody talks about it. It's considered very strange and stupid to talk about these kind of things. Yeah. So any questions or comment at this point before I just, maybe there are some more points to talk on, but Jatayu fighting Ravana. Was it what you were asking?
I knew that there's no chance for it.
No, but he accomplished one very important thing if you know the story. The story is that when Ravana kidnapped Sita, it was in a muhurtam where, see, Ravana kidnapped Sita looking at astrology chart. He kidnapped at such a muhurta where if something is stolen at that point, you will never get it back. So Jatayu delayed it to the next muhurta as per astrology, where in that muhurta, if anything is lost, you will surely get it back. So that delay he accomplished. I heard this actually. That I heard the muhurta also. कौन सा मुहूर्त था वो? तो एक मुहूर्त से अभिजित मुहूर्त something ना? Abhijit, yeah. So he moved it to the next muhurta. So it's not that was a very important contribution. Yeah. So and please remember, if you have any doubt between idealism and practicality, you stick to idealism. Yeah. This practicality is only in very, actually it is in case where you want to establish dharma, or there is some very pressing need. Otherwise there is no question. But that's the flexibility of a Vaishnava. So basically he's saying that that's the difference between Vedanta philosophy and all other philosophies. All other philosophy, if you see, they all stick to so-called idealism, and materialism sticks to so-called practicality. But the Vedanta philosophy exactly understands. Only a question.
You are saying that if for some person whose life is much more important than another person, he can allow for another person to live his life. So in Shivaji's history I was reading, when Siddhijor laid siege to Shivaji's fort when he was in Purandar, Shivaji had to escape. So when he had to escape, he had to arrange a way that two palanquins have to go in. One is real Shivaji and in one fake Shivaji. So fake Shivaji will be captured. So there was a hairdresser of Shivaji, and he agreed to go in a fake palanquin, risking his life, just so that Shivaji can escape from the backside door and go away to Raigad.
Oh, interesting. Good. And I think that another story is also there, na? That Shivaji is that other person. Who is that fellow who stands in the middle?
Jiva Mahal.
Jiva.
He's not king.
No, Jiva Mahal. Baji Prabhu Deshpande, yeah.
Baji is the same story. In same story, when Shivaji goes where Baji.
Is it the same story, huh?
Yes, same story.
Oh, okay. Good. Thank you.
In the case of this person, let's say who went abroad and he could not get something to eat, you were talking about that example. So he has to stick to practicality but feel guilty for it. So when there is a doubt between the two,
Yeah.
you have to stick to practicality but feel guilty.
Feel guilty as in it's not an artificial thing. One has to really feel that perhaps I'm not doing the right thing, but still at this point I know that I have no other choice. The whole point is that you do whatever is necessary, but still you understand. See, you understood there's a subtle difference. One is to just do it and say that अभी यही life है. ये सब practical नहीं है. जो बोलते हैं ना इस्कॉन में lecture में प्रसाद खाने का, ये सब practical नहीं है. नहीं होता है ये सब. ऐसे ही रहते हैं दुनिया. Then if once he starts talking like that, it means what? He has totally gone in the other domain. You understood, right? Whereas here you see that no, he feels that no, I should, but then what can I do? So that is very important. Your feeling is very important. What you're doing. It's not just the act, right? That's why.
Sticking to idealism may not be, like as you said,
Said that if there is a doubt, stick to idealism.
Yeah.
So that may not be.
No, strict. Why I said that is because in personal life applications, most of the times we may just give it up because of laziness, right? That's what we do generally. In that, because it's difficult for us to do. हमको difficult जाते हैं ना. ये practical easy है. Correct. I mean, whatever Prabhupada is saying, for example, in books, like you have to give 50% charity. It's very difficult to do it. Practical is don't give 1 rupee. It's jolly. Spend everything for yourself. Right? So that's the most practical thing to do. So that's the challenge, right? Practical is most easiest to do. That's materialism, right? Why are everybody taking to practicality? That's the most easiest thing to do. The least resistance path. Idealism is always very difficult. It's a big challenge to stick to all these ideals. But the whole point is the Shastra tells us to be flexible. And all the examples that we saw today, at least I must have quoted 20, 30 examples here from Mahabharata and Prabhupada's lives, and we are going to talk more on Prabhupada very soon. But in all this, what you understand is that flexibility. When they decided to move away from that ideal, because they knew that abhi ye nahi chalega. And those who do not do that are considered fundamentalists like Buddhist or Jains or something. They really don't know when to move away from it. They keep sticking to those ideals which have absolutely no meaning. Right? No meaning. Just like Govind Prabhu gave another example, this I had heard in another place. He was saying that when some Mughal armies, when they would, fight with some Hindu Rajput armies and they were losing, what they would do is they would keep some cows in front. That would give them some time to reorganize and fight better. Because these Rajputs would put down their guns, it seems. You understood, na? So basically here you see example of some opposite enemy exploiting your idealism. Knowing very clearly that you will stick to your ideal. So now, of course, on one way we can appreciate the Rajputs. What kind of standards they had. So they decided, let's give up our life only, rather than killing the cow. So that's very ideal. See, one thing is there, when a person gives up his life for an ideal, as such we are not supposed to criticize that. But only what we understand is that sometimes idealism can be suicidal. That's what we were trying to tell. Like I gave the example of Ladini Mataji also, right, in that context. She had an opportunity to go away from there. But she said, no, I'll give up my life right now. I'll take that Johnson's gun and pull it. Now if somebody, that's why I was asking this question, if somebody will ask you, should I do that? If Johnson comes and he says that Mataji, jao, what are we going to do? I mean, right now, let's say Johnson has come somehow. And he says that all the women, you can go, these men who are sitting, I'm going to knock them off. So what are the ladies supposed to do? It's a very difficult question, but the point here is that that's the challenge. Because, right, human life, what you can do in the world, are you going to see that or that? So when a person gives up life for idealism, we certainly glorify it. Like Socrates died or, whatever, our devotee examples, glorify it. But then as a lesson, as a legacy, what do we learn? What are we going to teach people? There we have to think carefully. Utna hi hai bas. So that's the whole point. Right? Yeah. Any other question? Yeah.
First of all, thank you for such a thought-provoking discussion. And One comment which I had was what that no, I have seen and I have heard and I have felt in my life also, that sometimes it becomes very confusing, as you told, to choose in what. Then a different perspective of seeing at it is that no, seeing life in terms of different no standard of ideals also. Like we see that no, even Arjuna, he was idealistic, but then Krishna introduced a higher ideal for him, that a spiritual idealism. So I mean, in one sense it was not practical, it was a higher ideal. So seeing life in terms of no ideals only, but then which ideal is higher than the other ideal, that would kind of solve
but then what happens is it becomes very difficult. See, to say that I'm always sticking to idea. That's why, see, Yudhishthir Maharaj, that lie that he spoke to Drona, was that a lie or was that a truth? No, Vaishnavas, we say it was a truth because he obeyed Krishna. But from the world sense, it was a lie only. That's why the Mahabharata says that he had to go to hell briefly.
Yeah.
You understood, right? The Mahabharata makes it very clear that what you did at that time was perhaps the most right thing to do from establishing dharma perspective, but still, it's not counted as ideal from the Mahabharata category. You understood the point,
but
right?
he went to hell because he doubted Krishna.
No. See, that's what the Vaishnavas say.
Okay.
But the Mahabharata itself doesn't say that. See, Vyasa has given his own commentary on what is what, right? We say that. See, that's what. So that's why we have to always remember this one very important point. So I'm coming to this right now. That the Bhagavatam or the Vaishnava perspective is looking at everything from the eyes of love. You understood? Premanjana churita bhakti vilochanena. This is the Bhagavad perspective. So devotees are lost in love. So everything they see from that love for Krishna perspective only. Hare, Krishna is saying, how can you disobey? Looking everything from that love perspective. It's good. Okay? But at the same time, so this point also he addresses very nicely. He says that the beauty of the Mahabharata is, he said that who can actually strike the right balance between idealism and practicality. He said only a person who has good sadachar, good sadhana and a guidance of a guru. Only such a person knows how to strike the right balance. Otherwise, he said, you cannot. He said the Pandavas, they had their sadhana. If you see, in several occasions, Arjuna is chanting like crores of Gayatri mantra to get one weapon. If you see, the sadhana is very powerful. Sadachar, their behavior. And they always had Dhaumya, for example, as their guide. And of course, in a higher sense, Krishna was also always there with them. Correct? So when you have so the thing is, the difference between the Bhagavatam and the Mahabharata is this, that in the Bhagavatam, the focus is only on the love of the devotee for Krishna. The real world challenges that come up, the challenges that the world puts in front of you, throws in front of you, the Bhagavatam just goes over it very quickly. And it goes over to the point that how the devotee was just loving God and he just transcended everything. But the Mahabharata presents more detailed analysis of the devotee's life. When the problems come in front of you, how you will fight against it. Correct? And for sadhakas, that is reality. Because our life is more like Mahabharata only, right? It is not so much like Bhagavad, where there is only love flowing. It's a fight, it's a challenge. Right? Yeah. Any other question or comment? Yeah. Yeah, take the mic because that it gets recorded only if you speak in the mic. No, you have to make it up, that switch. Tisri point, yeah.
It is regarding with the devotee. You are telling that he went abroad and having problem with the prasad.
Yeah.
So I have two questions. One is, we just know that if we eat outside food,
Yeah.
so it is not offered, then we are eating sin.
Yeah, that's ideal.
Yeah. And then
Yeah.
second thing is that you are just saying that he is feeling guilty from inside.
Yeah.
So what about the karma? Whether he is getting the karma or not?
Good question. He answers this by saying that a devotee is ready to take the karma. A devotee doesn't shy away from that. He said that is what the Mahabharata teaches us. That when Yudhishthir Maharaj went to hell for saying that lie, and he was told that you have gone to hell because you said that one lie to Drona, Yudhishthir and the Pandavas are not asking, अरे हमने तो भगवान को सुन के तो झूठ बोला था, हमको नरक क्यों दे रहे हो? They took personal responsibility. They knew हम दुनिया के अच्छे के लिए कर रहे हैं झूठ, लेकिन इसका रिएक्शन हम लेंगे. He said, but our attitude generally as devotees is that we want to do everything according to whatever and then we don't want the karma also. He said, this is not what the Gita expects from us. You are ready to take it. अभी कृष्णा को माफ करने में कर्मा तो उनके ऊपर है. But from our perspective, we understand. No, because see, the laws of nature cannot be violated, right? See, karma means what? Karma means reaction. That means when you eat food cooked by a materialistic person, it affects your mind. Now, in desperate situation also, if you eat, will it affect your mind? Of course it will. But you have to take it. Why you have to take it? Because you have to live, you have to maintain the body. In a higher sense, that is important. But the idea that that's why I said ideal and practicality and not ideal and higher ideal. Yeah, higher ideal philosophy का problem क्या है कि we may sometimes feel that I'm always idealistic. See, it also comes subtly from a thought process that I don't want to violate that idealism. Face the reality that sometimes under extreme circumstances you have to, but you take responsibility for it. That's what the Shastra says. That's why if you see Prabhupada also, he mentioned this very important point about Prabhupada. We'll come to that as well. He said that's why the Shastra says that Prabhupada says, he was quoting Prabhupada in one context, and Prabhupada also, by his own example, he proved this point. That any man who's about to die must beg forgiveness for whatever mistakes he did. You understood this? He must beg forgiveness, Prabhupada says. Only a shameless man dies without begging forgiveness, like Duryodhan. He was dying, ha ha ha, thinking, मेरे को देखो मैं मर रहा हूँ, मैंने enjoy किया है, पांडव लोग भुगत रहे, ही. You know, he died like that, right? Duryodhan was he was shameless, right? When he was dying. But he says that any gentleman feels bad at death, like Bhishma Pitama. He felt that I didn't protect Draupadi. Prabhupada, he was telling about Prabhupada, that's a very important point. He was saying that Prabhupada, in his preaching, Prabhupada had to sometimes criticize people. Right? He had to question scientists, God brothers on various occasions. Now, if you see that's what Prabhupada saw. Now, we are no one to say that, but I'm just saying that how Prabhupada saw himself. Okay? If you see in 1977, Prabhupada called all his God brothers and so many people and begged apology, saying that I have offended all of you on certain occasions. Now, if you see what is that offense that Prabhupada is talking about? Because on certain occasions, Prabhupada had to make it very clear to his disciples because the disciples were neophyte. You understood? He had to tell them that no, you cannot go to these people. They'll confuse you more. Correct? On several occasions, Prabhupada had to say that. Now, if you see from a very ideal Vaishnava perspective, that's how Prabhupada saw it. I'm just analyzing, because we have no one to analyze Prabhupada, but I'm just saying that what Prabhupada said about himself, that's a lesson for all of us. Prabhupada's point is that throughout my preaching career, I had to offend these people. I offended. Prabhupada said that, right? No, from a very idealistic perspective, Prabhupada felt that was not correct because a Vaishnava is not supposed to do that. That's why many times people also say, right? Hey, तुम लोग इतना बड़ा बड़ा स्वामी हो, दूसरों को क्यों criticize करते हो? किसी को बुरा नहीं बोलने का. But a preacher has to find faults in others. Correct? Because if you don't do that, practically nobody is going to understand anything. If you stick to the ideal perspective of a Vaishnava, किसी को निंदा नहीं करने का, preaching होगा क्या? नहीं होगा. लोग साईं बाबा वर्शिप करेंगे, सबको वर्शिप करेंगे. समझेगा ही नहीं लोगों को कि what is real bhakti. You understood? So Prabhupada called all his God brothers and begged for forgiveness. They said that no, Swamiji, you have not offended anybody actually. But Prabhupada called not only he called his family members also. Very interesting. He called his family as well. And he ensured that his family gets pension, his sons. Now that's another very interesting thing. I was reading in this book. I mentioned that also in my Vyas Puja offering in temple. I'll just reiterate that point again. I really was very much touched by it. Now we are kind of spontaneously moving into Prabhupada's life. I like this whole thing, that this Yogeshwar Prabhu, he mentions in his book about Srila Prabhupada's family at the time of Prabhupada's sannyas and Prabhupada's thought process on them. He said that, we have all heard the story, right? Prabhupada basically, around 1947 was the time when Prabhupada's, that 1946-47 is Lucknow business collapsed. You know that, right? और लखनऊ में Prabhupada ने जो final उनका business setup किया था, that big factory, 40,000 rupee investment, that crashed in 1946. And it was 1947 that the first time that dream came to Prabhupada, take sannyas from Saraswati Thakur. So what does Prabhupada respond? How horrible. How can I do that? At that time, what was Prabhupada's family situation? He explains here. When I read that, it's really very touching if you see it. Now we'll just establish that connection. He says here, at that time in 1946-47, Prabhupada and his wife had 8 children, it seems, originally. 3 of them died in infancy. 5 of them survived. So this point of time when Srila Prabhupada was approximately 51-year-old or something, when this dream started coming and his business started collapsing, his youngest son, Vrindavan Chandra Day, was 8-year-old, born in 1939. 8-year-old boy. One daughter, Bhaktilata, was 10-year-old. One son, Mathura Mohan, was 15-year-old. Another son, Prayagraj, was in college, but he was mentally handicapped. And he was being treated in psychiatric hospital. And there was one daughter who was just married. This was the situation when his business started crumbling down and his, the dreams of sannyas started coming. Now, if you see this very carefully, it's an extremely tough situation. If you see, we are all family people, right? We all, many of us have 8-year-old boys, kind of. We know what it means to have such small children. And no money also, not that, there was a huge inheritance with his family. It's nothing. His children who were interviewed, they say that we were all beggars at that. Literally, we had nothing with this. We were just broke. Now, again, if you see very carefully in Prabhupada's biography, you would see this. That from 1947 to 1955, Prabhupada is having this internal, he's going through the struggle of on one hand feeling that I must settle this family. I cannot leave them and go. But on the other hand, 2 things were happening. Whatever business he was trying to do was just collapsing. Second thing that was happening is that the dreams of his spiritual master were coming again and again to take sannyas. But then still, how can you leave and go? You have your responsibility, right? But then the thing that really pushed him, which I felt strongly from this, is that his wife was totally non-cooperative in his spiritual mission, even in practice. Like Prabhupada says that in 1950s when he would give lecture in Calcutta, his wife and all the children would be sitting upstairs and drinking tea. Or she would sell the books and buy tea biscuit. Or, say that I want tea over you and all those kind of things. So at that point, Prabhupada decides to go home. But the point is, though he did that, just try to imagine, even when a person takes sannyas, officially speaking, you have nothing to do with your family. But again, you see in 1977, Prabhupada ensuring that his family is also set. He's calling his sons, Mathura Mohan and Vrindavan Chandra. Both of them he's calling to Vrindavan. And he's telling Tamal Krishna Maharaj that this wife of mine and these sons, because they never recovered only financially after Prabhupada left. See, everybody needs a base to come up in life. When you're totally crashed, then you just stay crashed only. You never come up. So they never kind of came up financially. So they never came up financially. So at that point of time, in 1977, he's writing pension. He's keeping some money in fixed deposit, saying that his wife and his children should get this money. And after they are dead, that money can come back to ISKCON. Prabhupada does this thing. So that whole thing of 1977 episode, when Prabhupada, how he leaves body, so that's what we were talking about earlier, that every gentleman before he dies has to beg forgiveness to whomever he has done some mistake in any way. You understood this? Prabhupada, when he calls his sons, you will not believe, if you read the biography, you will see, he's telling Mathura Mohan and Vrindavan Chandra, your wife was actually a very nice lady. My wife, your mother was a very nice lady. He's telling Mathura Mohan. I was very tough to deal with. This Prabhupada is saying on his last days. See, the point here is very carefully if you observe, Prabhupada did it for a higher cause only. आपका question. Higher cause के लिए कुछ किया तो फिर अपने को कुछ कर्मा इफेक्ट ही नहीं है वो थियोरी के हिसाब से है लेकिन वैसा नहीं है बट इंडिविजुअली यू टेक रेस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी फॉर इट इंडिविजुअली यू डोंट से दैट मैंने वो हायर कॉज मैंने सरस्वती ठाकुर के लिए चैतन्य महाप्रभु का मूवमेंट के लिए मैंने प्रचार किया अभी कहाँ है ऐसे फैमिली 4 लोग क्या फर्क पड़ता है he doesn't think like that you understood Prabhupada doesn't think like that we may think like that from the philosophical perspective for Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's movement Nityanand Prabhu's movement whole universe का purpose जो है उसके लिए Prabhupada के अरे फैमिली को sacrifice किया क्या फर्क पड़ा that's our thought process because we are neutral observers we are not in the party ना It is not that we are the woman and the children in that house and our father or husband has gone to take sannyas. हमारे लिए ये न्यूट्रल एपिसोड है. हम सिर्फ वेदांत फिलोसफी से देखते हैं इन लोग सबको. वेदांत का चश्मा लगा के देखते हैं सबको. चलो कुछ नहीं, कुछ फर्क नहीं पड़ता. एटर्नल क्रेडिट है तुमको. अपना पेट भरा है तो कुछ प्रॉब्लम ही नहीं है. Stomach is full with lot of prasad and everything, so we're very confident about it. But the point really here is they individually take responsibility for it. He said that no, I have not done the best in that situation. उसको rectify करना पड़ेगा. So this is a very important theme. This is not just what Prabhupada did. This is a very important theme in life. Before you die, you have to set right relations with everyone, apologize to every person. That's how a dignified man gives up the world. A shameless man dies like Duryodhan. Why? Now try to understand why a dignified man has to beg apology. Because on several occasions, a dignified man, for the sake of dharma, would have moved away from ideal. And in moving away from ideal, he must have done some mistakes. And he takes personal responsibility for those mistakes. Like Yudhishthir Maharaj, who was feeling that I moved away from my ideals. अबे धर्म establish करने के लिए I moved away from ideal. But no, I don't feel like that. We feel that Yudhishthir did it for that. But Yudhishthir doesn't feel like that. He feels no, मैंने अच्छा नहीं किया. I feel bad about it. So that is that personal responsibility. And that is what a Vaishnava is. And that is what Gita is talking about. Right? That's the answer to your question. Yeah, move the mic to someone. Yeah, here.
Prabhu, just now we are speaking about idealism, and there are some religions. I will just name them, just like we have Muslim religion, where they now what we are. It's a global phenomenon now. Under the name of idealism, they are preaching something different, and they are creating extremism.
Yeah.
So, and if you see the basis on which they are preaching this extremism is based on the scriptures.
Yeah.
I mean, their scriptures.
Yeah.
So, if there's a Muslim person, what he is supposed to do? He should reject those verses which are generally considered as toxic verses. And what should that person or the religion do? And also another question: if we so-called Hindu or whatever, Sanatan Dharma, people, we come across some such rules or some incidents in our scriptures. So what we are supposed to do in such things? Just like Chanakya Pandit had some, we have heard about his comparison of a woman with, Mridanga. If we hear something like that, what we are supposed to do in this,
Two questions.
situation?
So the first thing is, if you carefully observe, other than the Vedanta philosophy of Vyasadeva, other than that, the philosophy of Vyasa and the Mahabharata, the Gita, the Ramayana, the right balance between idealism and practicality is not seen anywhere. So Govind Prabhu calls this observational science. Very nice name he gives to it. I'll come to your question. So he says, the Gita, Mahabharata is all observational science. That means the science is such that by observing in the world itself, you can understand these truths. It is not necessary that somebody has to say it, that's why it is true. Like he gives the example of Matra Sparshastu Kaunteya. It's an observational science. You can see in the world that as long as you see in the world, there will be inconvenient situations you have to tolerate. No question. You cannot say I'll not tolerate. Hoga hi nahi. So the first thing is that other than Vyasa's philosophy, like I was giving earlier, perhaps before you came, I was giving example of Buddhistic philosophy. These are all idealistic philosophies. And because they're idealistic philosophies, they're totally impractical. That's why people who give up religion, they find religion as such a nonsense. They find that this is not practical only. You understood? That's the accusation of the materialist towards religion. That what you're talking is totally impractical. And sometimes our Hare Krishna people also, we may project Hare Krishna religion like that to people, which is our challenge, where you don't project it at all in a practical way. Is it not a fact that many times people feel that what we talk or say or do sounds impractical? That's because we have given that feeling to them. Actually, it is not like that. Actually, it is the right balance between idealism and practicality. But generally, all religions give an impression of idealism only to people. And these man-made religions which are there, see now as far as Islam and others are concerned, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu very clearly tells Chandkazi that your scriptures are imperfect because they are composed by people who are imperfect. So they stick to certain themes which are extremely ridiculous. Like for example, if you see the concept of atheist, if you see the concept of atheist in all these religions, it is so stringent. In Islam, atheist means somebody who doesn't accept Muhammad as a prophet or Allah as the God. It's not like that. So from their perspective, even somebody like Santa Tukaram is a atheist only, kafir hai wo. Understood? Which is very ridiculous because they just don't have any flexibility only in their system. Their religions are, forget balancing, it's too rigid. It's too rigid. You cannot have any flexibility. So it is said that only Ravindra Srila Prabhupada mentions this very interesting point about Christianity. He says that it was only in 1960s that the Pope and the Christian Church agreed that other people also in the world can be saints. In 1960, so Ravindra Srila Prabhupada says that there were 3 incidents that happened in 1960 which made the ground favorable for Srila Prabhupada's arrival. One is that the America relaxed their visa policy. They decided to give permanent residency very easily. Like Prabhupada, he did not have to always jump from America to India to renew his visa. He allowed them to come. Second thing is that hippie movement where people were looking for alternatives. And the third thing is this, that the Pope had just announced, it seems in the 60s, Ravindra Srila was mentioning this point, that other people also can be saints. तब तक उनका इतना rigid था. There is absolutely no balancing in these religions. You understood, right? So other than Vyasa's philosophy, and that also most devotees also don't understand it. In a sense that most of us also struggle with understanding. We either take to complete idealism or sometimes we give up everything. That's why sometimes devotees also say, Prabhuji, बहुत बोलते हैं ISKCON में, सब नहीं हो सकता. We will just adopt the practical world style. You understand? So sometimes we also as ISKCON devotees, we don't know how to strike the balance. We sometimes either say that we will be too ideal or we will say that we will give up everything. This tendency is very strongly there within us also, if we introspect. Right? So other than Vyasa's policy, it is not there anywhere. Now second thing, as far as many other people in within Sanatana Dharma also, there are certain ritualistic ceremonies which overly emphasize on idealism and makes the person too guilty. So Govind Prabhu also made a very clear statement by saying that there are ritualistic procedures or ceremonies or very ritualistic Kadak Brahmins in India who stick to idealism so strongly, just like we see in Chaitanya Charitamrita. That what is his name? वो घी खा के वो बोले ना उसका नाम है सुबुद्धि राय. उसको बोले ना कि he has take something, a Muslim has sprinkled water on you. So imagine what kind of idealism they're sticking to. Are totally impractical, total stupidity. Of course, today we have gone to the other extreme where you eat from any Muslim's hand in a hotel and you don't feel anything wrong about it also. Like normal person, if you tell him, "Oh, इसमें क्या है भाई? इसमें तो कुछ फर्क ही नहीं पड़ता." So they've gone to the other extreme. So previously they were like that. So within Sanatana Dharma also see, because even if your dharma is correct, ultimate dharma is correct, followers can be foolish, right? So there were Brahmins in India also who stuck to ritualism from the perspective of, keeping it too idealistic and seeming totally outdated and impractical, because of which we lost our religion in so many ways, right? Yeah, but the point really is that Vyasa's Mahabharata and Krishna's Gita is not from that perspective. The Vedanta philosophy, that's why there are 6 philosophies, right? The Vedanta philosophy is the most broad-minded and balanced one. And that is the philosophy of Vyasa, which he writes in a story form in the Mahabharata, sutra form in Vedanta Sutra, in a philosophical form in the Bhagavad Gita, and in the form of ultimate love through Srimad Bhagavatam. Correct. Okay? Make sense? Yeah, one second. Just go ladies there. Mike. Yeah. Yeah, third level.
Hare Krishna.
Yeah.
Prabhuji, about the story of Sudama and Krishna, when Krishna shot an arrow to that bird.
Yeah.
And then when their guru said that he is also right and you are also right. So many times in Krishna consciousness, we have to we are in different stages of Krishna consciousness also.
Yeah.
Of neophyte devotee, a new devotee, and then gradually after 15-20 years, we are supposed to mature at a certain level. So the practicalities that are applicable for the new devotee can be true for that devotee, but if we apply the same practical principles, then
correct. Understood.
So many times we see that some counselors, for the sake of their neophyte counselees, they have to give them parties in outside restaurants and This they take them for.
Who has to give? Counselor has to give party.
I mean, this is what I have seen also in Pune. Also, it happens.
Oh, really?
Yeah, one senior counselor only like that. But according when
It's
we
being recorded, so be careful in leaving. किसी का नाम हम ले YouTube में जाते हैं मेरा सब लेक्चर आजकल. Be careful. वो माइक जरा माता जी की ओर कर दो. माइक नहीं, कैमरा. They will understand who asked it. Okay, go ahead.
But
Wait. No. Yeah, go ahead.
so when we talk to the when I spoke to the counselee that why you all go like that to the even when they go for outings they eat anywhere and like that. So she said that there are many new devotees in our group who cannot accept the Krishna consciousness as strict standards. So for them to feel at ease.
That's the challenge. The challenge is, it is so easy to take to the so-called practical approach in the name of accommodating people, accommodating dharma. See, that's why you have to be brutally honest to decide how you will balance. You understood the point, right?
Yeah, because the guilt feeling is there, and at the same time to show that we are enjoying outside.
Yeah, so
And
see, basically
it's
we
such a
cannot.
contradiction.
Yeah, I know, I understood that. So that's the whole challenge. The challenge between this balancing is not very easy, because many times a person may also start speaking or talking in terms that this ideal is impractical. When we have started feeling like that in our heart, that is the first symptom that we have kind of slightly digressed from the dharma. You understood, right?
Yeah.
See, two things are there.
So they say that the
Just like
higher-
I'll give a simple
higher
example. Just
principle-
simple example. Like Prabhupada says, right, we are supposed to give 50% of our earning in charity. Okay. Now perhaps it's likely that most of us are unable to do that. But now there are two approaches to it. One approach is to say that ये तो practically नहीं है. Once we start doing that, we have actually fallen off from the dharma, because the dharma does demand that you do the charity. You understood? The other perspective is that perhaps I am unable to do it because of whatever my financial implications, complications, and the modern world, which I am only responsible for, because the very fact that I am sitting in Kali Yuga till today is because I chose to sit in this world, and I have in such a complicated world where these things are perhaps I am finding it very difficult. But to take responsibility for that, you understood? It's a very subtle thing actually. It all depends on how you are feeling within. You understood? You got the point or no? So it's very difficult actually. So you know how when you compromise towards practicality, what you really feel in your heart at that time actually decides whether you are still the loyal follower of Vyasa and Krishna, or are we, kind of more towards the materialism.
Yeah. So
And
the
that-
explanation that is given
Yeah.
when we ask, they say that the higher purpose is to make the other person favorable for Krishna consciousness.
Yeah, they are doing it
Yeah.
for dharma, but there is a challenge. And also, they should also know this, that we will take the responsibility of that. That means when you eat outside, whatever karma comes, however your consciousness is spoiled because of that, uska responsibility tumko lena padega. You understood? That's a serious thing actually. Have you understood all that? If you have understood that and you are doing it, it's a different thing. But without understanding, if carelessly we are doing, then that's a different thing. You got the point, right, Mataji, what I'm saying?
Yes.
Yeah?
And
Yeah.
many times it so happens that devotees go for outings and they have to stay outside.
Yeah.
And they say that sometimes we need a break also from our daily life. So there are not always devotee restaurants available.
Okay.
So there they find
Mataji,
some-
one thing is very clear.
and
This
also-
practicality is never suggested from a personal convenience, inconvenience perspective. It is not because, see, try to understand. Ideal, for example, in terms of food or whatever is there, it is not that you take to practicality in terms of because, अरे हमेशा ये possible नहीं होता है मेरे से. Then at least be honest that I am not at that level. Don't, you understood, right? Be honest about yourself. Say that, okay, at least be clear that, you are doing something that is perhaps not the best or whatever.
Yeah.
But let's not justify everything saying that everything is.
Yeah, but then
Yeah.
at different stages of devotee's life, the same karma is applicable for a senior devotee also and a neophyte one also, because at least that person is trying not to eat onion garlic, and the senior devotee understanding that is karmic is, and he is supposed to at least.
Generally, the Shastra says that reaction is depending on your situation. It is never same. That means the reaction from the Shastra perspective, एक ब्राह्मण क्षत्रिय वैश्य शूद्र ने एक ही गलती किया, चारों का अलग अलग रिएक्शन है. एक रिएक्शन नहीं रहता शास्त्र में. देखते हम अलग अलग रिएक्शन है, क्योंकि जितना आपका ज्ञान ज्यादा है और जितना आपको ज्यादा कृपा मिला है, तब भी आप एक चीज कर रहे हो तो आपका रिएक्शन ज्यादा है उसके लिए. इट्स अ वेरी सिंपल थिंग. It's relative only. It's never absolute. How can it be? You have given so much facility. From whom more is given, more is expected. This is general philosophy. It is same in the sense that there is immediate, this thing is the same. But obviously, right? From a devotee, more is expected. Yeah? Okay? Yeah, good. Any other question? Mataji's side, anyone else? Yeah.
Like, to be idealistic in
Yeah.
life, as devotees, we need to have ideal devotees, senior devotees around us, who
Yeah.
are themselves following in their lives, because of whom we feel inspired.
Yeah.
And then we take to the process, very seriously. But if we find our seniors, being more of practical and less of idealistic, then how can we keep ourselves inspired in this particular case?
Huh. That's a... Yeah, I understood. See, ultimately, the progress of any spiritual society will depend on the quality of leadership. It's a general fact. Right? So one thing is there that, see, seniors and leaders, we can see it in many ways. One thing, for example, for all of us, most of us sitting over here, we are initiated. We have a spiritual master, right? Right? So even though we are not in daily touch with him, but still we know his personal lifestyle. So that ideal is always there for me and you to follow and aspire. Correct? That means what I'm trying to say is that it is not, perhaps in the community of devotees where we are living in, some people who have spent some extra years in Krishna consciousness, perhaps they may be doing something some particular way. But I think we should not get morose by that, because we don't really know. See, one thing is very clear from the Shastra. We cannot judge anybody because we really don't know why perhaps somebody is doing something. It may even be because of his own contamination or whatever. Or it may be because he's genuinely sacrificing in the spirit of what she's saying. Just like, for example, like going back to Kamal Gopi Mataji's example, if you see a very senior counselor taking his counselee to Deccan Vaishali Hotel to make them happy and give a nice feast, So now, see, we cannot really question that person in a sense that we perhaps may know that I cannot do it. But if that person is doing it genuinely with a feeling that this food is poison, but I'm doing it just for this person, we don't know that. So we cannot judge another person. So I'm just making that point outright, first of all, that these principles are generally to apply to oneself. But still I'm saying that in any case, for all of us, our spiritual master is there, who's setting a good example. That's something we can always look upon, right? Though perhaps in our immediate vicinity or surroundings, the devotees we are living with, people may be at different levels. Is that okay? Answerable or what? You don't seem to be happy about it. It's okay? I'm also trying to think what you said. I got your point really, but it's a challenge, I agree. Yeah.
Actually, many lifetimes of spirituality is also.
Seniority is not only in terms of
that is
years
there.
in
But,
this lifetime.
but we understand seniority in this life only, na? हमको कहाँ पिछले जन्म का record है?
Yeah,
कोई
but
past life memory के साथ है ही नहीं
I
यहाँ पर.
mean, from one perspective, we can think that maybe someone.
Whatever. That's what. See, others you always give benefit of doubt. Only to yourself you cannot give. That is the principle, na? Vaishnava principle. Right?
Prabhupada, in connection to what she said, Prabhupada, overall, if you see his person, in terms of this ISKCON, he almost had a practical approach. But then, from a leadership perspective, that's what he's saying. So, what do you look at it?
Yeah, Prabhupada's approach, if you see, I think I'll go to that now because I wanted to speak something about Prabhupada as well before I just conclude and take some more questions. So, I've just taken some incidences from here. Again, I tried to take things which were in line with the topic of discussion that we are having. So, I was very surprised to read that on the day Prabhupada met Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati in 1922, जब Prabhupada Saraswati Thakur से मिले and he got that instruction, preach in English language all over the world, the next day he resigned from his job. Do you know that? Yeah, I was reading in this book that the next day Prabhupada handed the resignation in that Karthik Bose laboratory. He came with the resignation because that job was very hectic. And he said that I've got this new instruction, I want to do something now. So you can imagine how quickly Prabhupada took up to that instruction with some seriousness. He didn't think about what he will do because he had a family. His daughter was born at that time. He was married. This was 1922. His first daughter was born. He knew he cannot take sannyas immediately. But he went in with his resignation letter the next day. But that Karthik Bose says that, okay, I understand you want more time for spirituality. So I will give you dealership. So he sends him to Allahabad, where he makes him his dealer in his products, this medical, pharmaceutical products. And he says that in this role, you will get more money also, and you will get more time as well. And you can explore your spiritual perspectives. So Prabhupada says, yes, this I accept. And Prabhupada goes ahead. So I like that pretty much to see how Srila Prabhupada, he took to that instruction the next day. That's what he talks about. That when Saraswati Thakur met him and told him that preach in the Western world, next day he resigned. Which was something which is quite inspiring to see somebody taking to that ideal immediately. Another example Prabhupada gives about his own spiritual master Saraswati Thakur is very interesting in the context of idealism and practicality. He said Saraswati Thakur would say that only foolish people insist that I will continue to take bath in the same place where the Ganges was once flowing. Today the Ganges has already changed the course. So you are supposed to take bath in another place. But foolish people will insist, नहीं गंगा वहीं था पहले मैं वहाँ पर ही नहाऊंगा अभी भी. वहाँ पानी नहीं है अभी dry bed है. So he says that foolish people stick to some very rigid things which are coming from previous generations without understanding when and how to be flexible. And as again, if you see Prabhupada, he really took that instruction, just like giving woman Brahman Diksha. This was Prabhupada's own style of doing things, right? It wasn't there before in our parampara. There was no example of this in any other parampara also. Now please try to imagine. So from an ideal, see that's an ideal, right? Ideal means what? Something that all paramparas and acharyas are doing. To move away to what is practical, how confident you should be. That's what I was asking the question earlier. Like when Ramanujacharya had to give sannyas clothes to Kuresh and send him to Kola Tunga to be ready to face death. How confident you should be in yourself to take that step. And these are not shameless people. They are people with high level of character and virtue. But they are ready to take that practical step. So that's what we see here again, Srila Prabhupada, when he took that decision immediately. So we all know that story, right? In 1967 or something, when he gave the first Brahman Diksha, he gave only men initially, it seems. The two Matajis over there, they were very upset, it seems. And then Prabhupada noted them and understood that this country में चलेगा नहीं actually. ऐसे चल ही नहीं सकता. And in retrospect, if we see, Prabhupada's decision was so crucial. Like Gauranga Prabhupada was once telling that it is only because of Mataji devotees that deity worship in ISKCON has survived in the Western world. नहीं तो कभी का crash हो जाता हो. Because it's only because all these men, big men, so many of them, they came, fell down, went away, left ISKCON. But these women sincerely worship the deities installed by Prabhupada in the Western world. You understood? So again, Phalena Parichayet. You also see somebody moving away from an so-called ideal to an accommodating practical approach, and you can actually see that it's really effective by seeing the result. What has happened at the end? And what would have happened had you been rigid unnecessarily? So that's why Prabhupada's quote of his own Guru Maharaj is so appropriate. Ganga has changed the course now. You can't say that I will take bath over there only. That is the point. Yeah, some more things about Prabhupada, which I, kind of found it very striking here. Some things I'll have to just read up here. So he says that how Srila Prabhupada, he was, the way he actually attracted people in the West was by his personal behavior, acharan. Like we were telling right earlier, sadhana, sadachar and following guru are considered most important things. So he gives examples here that how Prabhupada, when he would find drunkards sleeping in the doorway when he was in New York, he would tell them, it seems, my dear sir, please get up. He would address these people also very respectfully. He says that that's the way he would deal with all these drunkards and bums who were on that, the stairway. So he gives many such examples to show how Prabhupada's dealings with people actually moved these Westerners maximum. When they came to Krishna consciousness, more than his talk, the way he dealt with them actually impacted their lives the most, which is not very surprising because that's what we talk about a Vaishnava, right? A Vaishnava is someone who deals by his own behavior. Yeah, this is a very beautiful glorification which I read here. This is by, there's this professor whose name is Thomas Hopkins, a very famous person. So he tells about Prabhupada here. He says that Prabhupada's story is astonishing because you wouldn't believe it. A person 70 years old coming to a country where he has never been before, he doesn't know anybody, he has no money, no contacts, none of the things you would say make a recipe for success. And he's going to recruit people not in any systematic way, but just picking up whoever he comes across. And he's going to give them the responsibility to make a worldwide movement. You would say, what kind of program is that? Are there any precedents for this? Perhaps yes. Jesus of Nazareth also went around saying, come, follow me, drop your nets, leave your tax collecting and become my disciple. But there is a difference. In Jesus' case, he was dealing with his own people. He was dealing with his own people in a familiar environment. Whereas Srila Prabhupada was dealing with people of a different country itself. So this must be seen as unique in the history of the world. So I thought that was a very extremely beautiful way to glorify and look at Srila Prabhupada. Yeah, I'll just tell some other points in connection with what we have been talking. 182.3. Yeah, so Prabhupada was in France in 1971. So that is actually one of the center themes that Yogeshwar Prabhu takes because he is a French devotee. I'll just end in 5 minutes. So he tells that when he was in France, the mayor of France invited Srila Prabhupada to what they call a state reception. You know this, right? In every country there is something called state reception. State reception means it's a very formal program where the country actually receives a dignitary. So Srila Prabhupada was invited to that particular hall, and Prabhupada was made to sit in a kind of sofa in a very nice place, asan. And then Prabhupada was told that, Prabhupada was told, the devotees were told that when the mayor comes, so the mayor of France came to receive him, and this was on public TV. All these people, that means like some president has come from some country, then they do state welcome for that particular person. So these authorities had told the devotees that when Swamiji is being received, is being welcomed as a state guest, he should be standing in front of the mayor. So Yogeshwar Prabhu had not told that to Prabhupada. So finally the mayor came on stage, everything was set, Prabhupada was still sitting. Now it was the time for Prabhupada to stand as that mayor is receiving him. Okay, so beautifully explains. I'll just go to that 1 second, 2:30. So, yeah, so the mayor Jacques Dominati, he arrived. And he looked at Yogeshwar Prabhu, indicating that we are now beginning the ceremony. It was some kind of formal official thing. Asked Swamiji to stand up. So Yogeshwar Prabhu said that, he's the author of this book. So he said that I whispered into Prabhupada's ear, Prabhupada, you're supposed to stand up. He's going to greet you and you're supposed to stand up. And after he speaks, you're supposed to respond. So Prabhupada, it seems, tilted his head sideways and said, I'm supposed to stand? For who? So Yogeshwar Prabhu said, I immediately realized trouble. Because you cannot convince Prabhupada against his own thought process. So it seems when this mayor came, he was looking at Yogeshwar Prabhu. Bataya na tumko? Khada rehne ka karke. So he was like helpless. I can't do anything. So it seems at this time all the cameras were there, and this was. So Yogeshwar Prabhu was also worried that this would be like a scandal or kind of a headlines that somebody has come and is so disrespectful that he's not standing. So it seems the mayor also was like looking and For a long time he was staring, he was showing disgust in his face. He was not knowing what to do because the protocols are being violated, right? Even presidents of big countries come, they know what they are supposed to do. And here the Swamiji has come and he's just sitting only, he's not standing up. So finally he admitted defeat, it seems. And the mayor welcomed him. He spoke about Prabhupada, whatever he had to do in French. And he welcomed Prabhupada as a state guest. And after that is done, Prabhupada got up, it seems. Prabhupada got up and said, you have spoken very nicely about France as a place that recognizes spirituality. This Prabhupada is speaking on public television. Huh? Let us examine what is spirituality. There is a soul in the body. Any government unaware of the simple fact is demoniac. Your Napoleon once said, Prabhupada is saying this on his state reception. Your Napoleon once said, I am France. Well, France is there. Where is Napoleon? The soul has gone. Where is he gone? That is a subject of education that the French government must consider and support. You know, Prabhupada, he spoke in a perfectly structured way, and it seems he gave a 10-minute response, and then Prabhupada did something very unusual, it seems, which he never did. He went ahead and shook hands with that mayor. Generally, it seems Prabhupada would not do that. He would not touch like that people's hands and all that. But he did that, it seems, on this point. And then later Prabhupada mentioned, it seems, to the devotees, that the way you treat a spiritual personality has to be different from where you treat routine politicians. So for that reason, Prabhupada continued to sit, wanting to show what is an ideal way a saint has to be welcomed. He's not to be welcomed in a very political way, that fellow keeps standing. You should know that he's to be respected much more than that. So again, if you see, right, see that's what, a Vaishnava, along with this humility, Prabhupada was very humble as a person, but still you should know who you are, what you are representing, and what you are supposed to do at a particular time. If you look at that challenge, it's very challenging actually, to really know what is dharma at a particular point and behave that way. So he goes on to say that visit of Prabhupada in France was a very, very successful visit where Prabhupada would challenge anybody who came across him. So it was in that visit only that Prabhupada spoke to this cardinal also, Daniel Yu, where it seems that meeting with that cardinal was supposed to be a very friendly meeting, goody. And the first question Prabhupada asked him is, may I ask you one question? Prabhupada started. Jesus says, thou shalt not kill. Why are you Christian people killing? Full talk was only on that. Why are you killing and maintaining slaughterhouse? And that person was saying this, that. Prabhupada was not budging only. And it seems this was the theme. Prabhupada took a very strong stance in preaching in France. All these big cardinals, bishops, people would come. Prabhupada would ask them questions. It seems on one occasion there was one group of Christians who came to meet Prabhupada. And Prabhupada, it seems, there were tears from Prabhupada's eyes only saying that why are you people not following your religion properly? Why are you not following? That means from Prabhupada's perspective, it was not just trying to challenge them and trying to put them down. It was true compassion. So Yogeshwar Prabhu says that on that context, Prabhupada cried actually in front of this some group of Christians who had come. Challenging them, thou shalt not kill. He was not just saying to put them down or say that you people are fallen. He was feeling bad that why you people are unable to follow true dharma. Why are you missing out on that? That was his style of dealing with things. Right? And so in essence, we see Prabhupada as a very good example of, the theme that I was speaking earlier, of someone who really knew what is ideal and what is practical. Like again, going back to all the examples of food, staying in Sally Agarwal's house, keeping his food in Sally's refrigerator where there was meat. If you see from an ideal platform, is that ideal? We all know that you cannot do that. But still, in that situation, what else could be done? To do that. And to again tell Sally and her husband would feel apologetic. That, so we are sorry Swamiji, we are cooking all these things over here. Prabhupada would say, never mind it. Don't worry about it. You understood? Because Prabhupada felt that I have come to their home, they have invited me here. Right? I have to adjust in whatever the situations are. So that kind of a thing, actually, so what I understood from that Govind Prabhu's seminar on this is actually in two parts. There's one other part, we'll cover that next time. Is that only a Vaishnava can actually find the true balance between idealism and practicality. Otherwise, all the others stray on extremes only. Sometimes idealistic, sometimes practical. And practical means give up all kind of ideals and be materialistic. So but only a Pakka Vaishnava can actually find the right balance. And the Pandavas find that. Krishna helps them find that. Because in the Pandavas' case, that balance was even more hard to find because it was the tests were very challenging. But in our lives, obviously, it's not that challenging. It's all like this only, whether to eat in the hotel or no, and very simple kind of things where we are most of the time stuck with. Right? So we end. Any concluding comments or questions by anyone? Yeah, give the mic.
Are we equating rigidity with idealism? I mean, because rigidity in terms of, let's say, Smartas or Buddhists you were mentioning.
Yeah.
Like that way, if you say Ambedkar converted to Buddhism because it was more flexible in that sense for him.
No, it's not like that. Rigidity is not idealism. Idealism means ideals. Ideals means, for example, non-violence is an ideal, right? You don't unnecessarily kill, right? That's an ideal. Ideal means what? Something that you are supposed to, core principles which are not supposed to be sacrificed. And idealism is, that's why I told in the beginning, middle and end as well, that a Vaishnava is very conscious of the ideals. He's not going to throw it away randomly. But just that a Vaishnava knows when to go to the practical side. Right? Ambedkar did not convert to Buddhism because it is strictly ideal. He had nothing to do with Buddhism. He just wanted to, that was a political statement. He wanted to quit Hinduism in the name of all this caste thing and all, which also is not actually that serious. If you again examine Indian history, this whole caste thing also was played out in much more recent times also. It's not that always it has been like that or anything. And because he did not want to go to Islam, which was a very good thing he did, otherwise you would have unnecessarily had a huge Muslim population with all the scheduled castes converting to Islam. So he chose Buddhism, which is kind of non-threatening. Right? He just wanted to, that was a political statement. It had nothing to do with the philosophy of Buddhism. Absolutely nothing. Zero. Right? Makes sense? Yeah.
Also, Prabhupada, the example you gave of he giving pension to his children.
Yeah.
The same Prabhupada, when he talks, I think Tamal Krishna Maharaj, he says once that, after my passing away, ISKCON property should not be claimed by my
family,
seminal descendants.
Yes.
So make sure that it is properly,
Yes, of course.
So you can see this dual,
it's not dual.
Dual in the sense, kind of practical on both sides to make sure that ISKCON also...
Yeah, of course. The organization had to be protected. And some of his descendants, if I'm not mistaken, they did put a court case later to try to claim some ISKCON property. But they were not successful in that. So, yeah, so practical also means to protect the movement that you have created, right? But this side of it is also there. So in summary, only a person who has very good sadhana, sadachar, three things he mentions, Govind Prabhu. If you have good sadhana, you have good sadachar, and you are under the guidance of a superior, then you know how to strike that balance. As long as you are not doing any of these three, you will commit some mistake only. That's what he says, as a conclusion of his seminar on this thing. Right? It makes sense if you carefully think about it. It's not easy. Any other question or comment? Anyone else? Yeah, Mataji behind has a question. Pass behind. और तीसरे पे कर दो ओ माइक. Yeah, on it.
Prabhuji, you said three things: sadhana, sadachar, and guidance of a guru.
Yeah.
So, so when we are going through a phase of small kids, so sadhana of mother and to some extent father is also affected. So, and that is the phase where you really, whole things goes topsy-turvy and there is no routine. So how do we know that, because that time our sadhana is not good. So, yes, there can be guidance, but how do we know then we are at a right path, or we are not going in this direction, or sadhana is too much getting affected?
Yeah, I understand. See, first of all, honestly, if you see, I would say that for ISKCON women who have small children, even to chant 16 rounds of Hare Krishna and to do all the household activities itself is a very, very big task. That's why traditionally, if you see, I'll come to the ISKCON situation. Traditionally, if you see, women did not have any specific sadhana at all. If you see this very carefully, if you see the Vedic tradition, women were not prescribed any sadhana. One main reason was women would take a lot of responsibility in the home. And actually, if you see, sadhana was impossible. If a woman has 5, 6, 7, 8 children, like people traditionally had, they had joint families where there was actually a lot of work to do. It is ruled out that somebody could do this amount of, sadhana as such. That's why generally the sadhana for them was just to assess their husband. This is the traditional thing. So going from this is another topic. I'll take this some other time. In fact, that's the next part that he's talking about, woman. But in the modern world, that is not applicable. Modern world, that is not applicable because in general, in the modern sense, I mean, I'm not talking about you or she or some other specific woman, but in general, in the modern world, women don't have that kind of responsibility in a family. You understood? I'm coming slowly to the theme. That means generally, like first of all, in modern life, that means modern woman means I'm talking about a westernized kind of a home, which is by and large most of our homes also, where work as such is not so much because you have so many devices to do things. Families are very small. You just have people have 1 or 2 children maximum. You don't really go beyond that really. And not that there is a big joint family and there is Saas, Sasur, Devar and Devrani and so many other people. Cows, yeah, Govind mentions, cows are not there. So when all this is not there, then in that kind of lifestyle, then women have to do sadhana, as per our modern ISKCON understanding. That's why we have prescribed sadhana for women as well. Now, even for such women, when their children are very small, it is 100% understandable that no mother can say that I will close my eyes and chant my 16 rounds. The ideal standard. What is your ideal standard? In the middle of the round, you don't talk. In the middle of your round, you don't do anything. Ideal standard is like Purna Chandra Maharaj had once come to Atharva Jayadev Prabhu's home. He was telling ideal standard of chanting. He was telling ideal standard of chanting is, as you are chanting, he said, if your chadar falls down, don't take it and put it up. He was telling in great detail why you should not do that. Because he said, now you will feel chadar fell. Then later you will feel something is improper. Then you will feel pani pina hai abhi. Like that, there is no end to it. You understood? It's like that story of that, brahmachari ka. वो कोपन और ये वो फाइनली वो शादी करके बहुत बड़ा फैमिली हो जाता है उसका. So he was saying that even if your chadar falls off, don't put it back. After 4 rounds only you should put it back. He said 4 round के बीच में कुछ भी नहीं करना है, इससे बैठ के जब करना है. So the ideal standard. Now the question is, should we criticize that ideal standard as totally ridiculous and impractical? No. If you do that, we commit an offense because we know that actually you're supposed to chant like that. Because we also know that many times the way we chant is such that it is only the ritual of chanting that is happening. Actually, there is no benefit. The only advantage of that chanting many times is that that regularity of chanting 16 rounds is maintained, so that one day when we start chanting like this, there will be some benefit. But other than that, several times of chanting is terrible actually. Correct? So, on one hand, we cannot criticize the ideal standard. But on the other hand, there is the practical issue. If someone has children as small as whatever they are, you just cannot chant like that. There's absolutely no question you could do it. So what should you do? You should understand that I have been currently given a responsibility by Krishna where I have to do these things. I know my sadhana is not perfect. Because my sadhana is not perfect, am I not getting affected by it? Yes, I am getting affected by it. Because my mind is disturbed, I am feeling frustrated, I am feeling angry, I am feeling, why did I take this bead in the first place in my hand? Correct? We are going through all these emotions. So that means what? We are getting affected. All I am trying to say is that when we move away from the ideal, even in the practical situation, we do get affected by it. That's what we have been telling always, right? Today's talk. We are affected by it. But at the same time, we understand that that is the only thing that is possible right now. So we accept it humbly. That right now, this is what I can do. Try to see how best we can do it. And ultimately, it's just a passing phase of life. I mean, talking from a very practical perspective, once children even become, at least our experience has been what? After they are at 6-7 years? Hey, come on. Be a little more positive. Our boys are quite big. I mean, morning they don't trouble you, right? You can sit and chat or what. Generally, I mean, yeah. See, generally, our understanding, my experience was whatever that once the children can do their entire bathroom program themselves and come out, that time, they themselves can go to the toilet, they themselves know how to take the brush, they know to on the geyser, take bath, come out and change their clothes. Yeah, but it's much better than before, right?
Mother is coming down at our level.
I mean, I and my wife are celebrating our 16th marriage anniversary today. So, yeah. So 16 years down the line, we certainly know that things have become better. I mean, much more than what our kids were when they were very small. That time it was too bad. Now it's slightly better. Maybe it will become better, even more better, right? Now it's not that bad. Right? One thing I have learned strongly from Govind Prabhu is that theism means, he gives a very interesting definition of theism. Maybe some other time we'll discuss this. He says theism means optimism. Atheism means pessimism. He says pessimism, this is a whole theme actually that he talks on in 2 classes. He says pessimism is an indication of atheism. You know, so I think from that perspective, if you look in general, to be positive that no, I will improve, things will change. Though you are currently also undergoing whatever struggles of hearing this class, you know, correct? Yeah, they are showing their love for each other, but sometimes that can be problematic as well. So, right? So, I think that, so this is a very important theme actually. Theism means optimism. Things will become better. And the first sign of atheism is feeling that nothing is going to improve in my life. Because there we have accepted that, you know, mera kuch nahi hoga. When you start feeling like that, that's considered an indication of atheism. As in, it is what he calls as psychological atheism. You know, not philosophical atheism, psychological atheism. So I think we look at it like that. Right? Is that okay? Yeah. Yeah. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Gaur Bhakta Vrindi ki jai. Nitai Gaur Premanande. Hare Hare Bhau. We'll have just a short kirtan. Mataji, you can do it. Hare Krishna. Yeah. Hey, tabla at the vasida. Tabla at the vasida. Chalo. Just 5 minutes.